What if I told you that the reason you're stuck has nothing to do with laziness? That no matter how big your dreams are, no matter how much motivation you've gathered from books, videos, and self-help content, you're not moving because there's something deeper, something psychological blocking you. Now, if you stick with me through this full series, I'll show you what no productivity guru or hype video ever does. A clear map out of the cycle. A way to break through what's holding you back. Not temporarily, but permanently. And it's not just a mindset shift. This is based on the powerful insights of Carl Jung, who spent his life trying to help people understand their own minds. So here's the deal. I'm not here to give you hype. I'm here to give you truth. And by the end of this series, you'll have a practical blueprint for turning your ambition into real, sustainable change. But it only makes sense if you stay to the end, because until you see the whole picture, nothing changes. Let's start with something you've probably experienced. You see someone, maybe online, maybe in your circle, who seems to be absolutely crushing it. They're building businesses, getting fit, creating amazing work, living with purpose. And you think, I have the same ideas, maybe even more ambition. Why can't I do what they do? So you make a plan. You set intentions. You tell yourself, this week will be different. But when it's time to act, something invisible holds you back. Most people call this laziness. They blame a lack of discipline or willpower. Maybe you've even called yourself lazy 100 times by now, but Jung would tell you this. Laziness is not a flaw in your character. It's not even about energy. It's a disguise, a mask, a surface-level word for something much deeper happening inside you. Because what you're really experiencing is inner conflict. A hidden war between the version of you that wants to grow and the version of you that's afraid of what that growth will cost. Jung called this hidden version of you the shadow. The shadow isn't evil. It's not your enemy. It's the part of your mind that holds everything you've suppressed. Your fears, insecurities, past traumas, old beliefs, and all the parts of yourself you've been taught to reject. Here's the twist most people never hear. The bigger your dream, the bigger your shadow fights back. Because growth is dangerous to the shadow. Every goal you set, every boundary you break, every time you imagine a life that's different from the one you've always lived, the shadow feels threatened. It thinks it's keeping you safe. It wants comfort, familiarity, and protection from emotional pain. That's its job. So when you decide to start something bold, what happens? Suddenly you're tired. Distracted, your mind starts inventing excuses. Maybe next week, let me just rest, I'll start after I finish this one thing. Sound familiar? This isn't weakness, it's a defense mechanism. Your ambition and your shadow are in a tug-of-war. And unless you recognize what's happening, the shadow will win every time. You might think the solution is more motivation, watching a few pump-up videos, listening to a podcast, following a new productivity routine. But all that does is pour fuel into the fire if you don't first understand your resistance. Jung believed this deeply. You cannot out-hustle the parts of yourself you refuse to acknowledge. So what happens? You get excited. You set a goal. You tell your friends you're going to finally launch that business, lose the weight, write the book, change your life. For the first few days, you're on fire. Then, the friction begins. You start delaying. Just one more video, just one more article. You convince yourself, it's not the right time. I need to prepare more. A few days pass, then a week, then a month. The fire burns out. You feel disappointed. And you go back to square one, chasing that next motivational high. But here's the truth. It's not a lack of talent, or time, or opportunity that's holding you back. It's this. You've never truly confronted what your mind is afraid will happen if you actually succeed. Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. So ask yourself honestly, how many times have you said something like, that's just who I am, or I always give up, or I guess I'm just not cut out for it? Those aren't facts. They're scripts, written by your unconscious, shaped by fear, and repeated so often that they feel like truth. But they're not truth, they're patterns, and patterns can be broken. So now I'm going to ask you the question no one asks. If you're ambitious and yet always stuck, what are you really scared of? Is it failure or is it success? and everything success would force you to become? Are you afraid of being judged, of standing out, of people expecting more from you? Your shadow doesn't want to ruin your life, it wants to protect you. But it can't tell the difference between real danger and imagined discomfort. Every time you choose comfort over action, your shadow grows stronger. And every time you shrink your world to avoid risk, your shadow gains more control. Most people won't get this far. They'll click away. They'll blame their energy levels, their genetics, their discipline, or their busy schedule. But you, if you're still watching, you're already different. You're already willing to go deeper than most. And in the next part, I'll show you exactly how to uncover your own shadow, what it's really afraid of, and what happens when you stop fighting it and start working with it. Because real transformation isn't about screaming affirmations into the mirror. It's about learning to listen to the part of you that's been screaming silently for years. You've probably blamed yourself for failing before. Maybe you called it laziness. Maybe you thought you lacked discipline, motivation, or even blamed your upbringing or genetics. But the truth? Most people never learned why they resist change. Carl Jung believed that what we call our life is actually just the sum of our unconscious habits, that most of the time we're not really living. We're being lived by patterns we never chose. This is where your shadow comes in again. It's not just a concept. It's the part of your mind quietly running the show. It's made up of survival strategies you developed without realizing it, stories and beliefs you absorbed when you were too young to question them. That's why change feels so heavy. You're not just trying to adopt a new habit, you're fighting an invisible force that's been protecting you, keeping you safe, small, and familiar for years. And if you want to move forward, you have to do what almost no one does: face your shadow directly. Think back to the last time you truly wanted something. Maybe you wanted to get in shape, start a business, get serious about your art, or finally speak your truth. What happened? Almost instantly, your mind found 100 distractions. Suddenly cleaning your room, scrolling your feed, watching how-to videos, anything felt more important than doing the thing. That's not random. That's your shadow defending its territory. Why? Because real change is a threat to your comfort zone. It represents the unknown. And the shadow's job is to keep you away from what's unfamiliar, because unfamiliar means potential danger. Jung saw this over and over again. His patients would come in with big dreams, big visions. But underneath that ambition was fear. Fear of failure, fear of being judged, fear of becoming someone they no longer recognized. So they self-sabotaged over and over and called it fate. But here's the paradox no one talks about. Every stuck habit gives you something in return, even if it's just temporary relief. Staying in bed all day? That means you don't have to risk disappointment. Not applying for that job? That means you never have to face rejection. Not starting your business? That means you never have to be seen trying and possibly failing. Your shadow is clever. It always offers you safety. It whispers, "You'll change tomorrow." But tomorrow never comes. And until you get honest about what you're getting from staying stuck, you'll never escape it. This is why Jung was so committed to radical self-honesty, even when it hurts, because most people never slow down long enough to actually listen to what their resistance is saying. But you can. You must. Try this tonight. Sit in silence for a few minutes. No music, no distractions, and then ask yourself, genuinely, what is the part of me that always resists trying to protect? What is it afraid will happen if I actually succeed? Let the answers come. Don't force it. Don't judge them. Just listen. You might hear something like, "If I succeed, I'll lose the people who love the old version of me." Or, "If I really go all in, I might fail and embarrass myself again." Or even, "If I become successful, I'll have to keep proving myself, and I'm already tired." That's not weakness, that's unprocessed pain disguised as procrastination or fatigue. But once you hear the story, once you bring it into the light, you can start to change it. Most people respond to these feelings with shame. They try to bully themselves into action. Just do it, no excuses, stop being weak. But Jung warned against this. You cannot shame yourself into growth, because shame fuels the shadow. It reinforces the belief that change is unsafe. Instead, Jung taught self-acceptance not as an excuse to stay stuck, but as a foundation for real movement. When you accept your shadow, not by agreeing with it, but by understanding it, you take away its ability to control you from the dark. Suddenly, you're not wasting energy on guilt. You're not stuck in mental loops of self-blame. You're not swinging between hype and crash. That energy, you now get to use it for real change. So, how do you begin? Tiny steps. The smallest, most honest action possible. You don't need to overhaul your life in one day. You just need to break the pattern. And you do that with movement. Feeling stuck? Don't plan a full fitness routine. Just go for a 5-minute walk. Want to launch a business? Don't build the whole brand. Just write down one problem you want to solve. Want to write? Don't outline a novel. Just write one paragraph, even if it's bad. Then stop and watch what happens next. Notice how your mind reacts. Does it try to downplay your progress? Does it say, "That's not enough," or "You'll never keep this up"? That's your shadow, trying to pull you back into the comfort zone. Don't fight it. Don't argue with it. Just notice. Every honest step you take, no matter how small, is proof that the shadow doesn't get to run the show anymore. But this is the part where most people quit. Why? Because it's uncomfortable. Because the progress is slow. Because they still want a shortcut. But the people who keep going, who stay honest, who take small, consistent actions, they're the ones who finally break through. Remember, you don't have to defeat the shadow in one epic battle. You just have to outlast it. Every time you show up, even when it's hard, even when the results don't come quickly, you reclaim a little more power. You've already done more than most people ever will. You've looked behind the curtain. You've seen how your mind tries to keep you small, and you've begun to understand the language of resistance. In the next part, I'll show you how to build momentum, how to turn these small actions into a steady rhythm that your shadow can't stop. Not just theory, a clear, practical method. You've made it further than most people ever will. By now, you've seen your patterns. You've felt the resistance. You've started to understand what your shadow is really trying to protect. But here's where most people stop. Not because they don't care, not because they're weak, but because insight alone doesn't equal transformation. You can know exactly what's holding you back and still fall into the same habits. Why? Because awareness isn't the same as action. Carl Jung knew this. He worked with people who had incredible insight into themselves. They could name their fears, describe their traumas, and trace their patterns all the way back to childhood. And yet, they stayed stuck. Why? Because they never turned their awareness into movement. So if you're still here, you're ready for the real breakthrough. How to take what you now see and turn it into momentum that lasts. The goal isn't to fight your shadow every day. That's exhausting. The goal is to make the shadow irrelevant by building a rhythm it can't interrupt. And that rhythm starts small. So small it seems pointless at first. Here's the truth. Your shadow is looking for any excuse to prove you're a failure. It wants to catch you slipping so it can whisper, "See, told you it wouldn't work." That's why you don't start with massive goals. You start with steps so small your shadow doesn't even notice. Want to write a book? Write one sentence a day. Want to get fit? Just stretch for 5 minutes. Want to grow your business? Send one email or write down one idea. The shadow can't argue with that. It's too small to fear. But over time, that one sentence becomes a paragraph. That stretch becomes a workout. That email becomes a client. What matters is the consistency, not the size. Because every small win builds something your shadow can't stop. Trust, self-trust. The belief that when you say you'll do something, you follow through. Most people try to build confidence by achieving big goals. But Jung would say confidence doesn't come from success, it comes from alignment. From making a promise to yourself and keeping it, no matter how small. That's how you rewire your mind. So let's get tactical. Here's your 3-part momentum formula. 1. Choose your tiny action. It should take less than 10 minutes. It should feel almost too easy. The goal isn't to impress anyone, it's to move. If your goal is to become more focused, your tiny action might be 5 minutes of journaling. If your goal is to get healthier, Your tiny action might be drinking one full glass of water first thing every morning. The shadow expects perfection or nothing, so you give it neither. You give it small and consistent. 2. Track it daily. Every evening, take 2 minutes to ask, did I do my small action? What did my shadow try to say today? Did I feel resistance, shame, avoidance? Write down something, even one sentence. This keeps your awareness active. It prevents you from slipping back into autopilot, and it gives you a record, proof that you're changing. Jung believed that self-awareness was the fuel of transformation, but only if you're honest. This step keeps you honest. 3. Find one person to share it with. It could be a friend, a coach, a journal app with a community. Doesn't matter. What matters is this: say out loud what you're working on, even if it feels silly, even if it's small, because when you say it, when you let it live outside your head, the shadow loses its grip. Suddenly, your resistance becomes relatable. Someone else goes, yeah, me too. And you realize you're not broken, you're just human. You're not alone. This step is non-negotiable. Change doesn't happen in isolation. Jung believed transformation was a relational process. The shadow thrives in silence. You beat it with connection. Now let's talk about setbacks, because they will happen. You'll miss a day, you'll fall back into an old habit, you'll feel discouraged and think, see, I'm still the same. That's when the shadow shows up loudest. But listen carefully. Setbacks are not failure. They're part of the pattern. And if you expect them, you won't be surprised by them. What separates those who grow from those who quit isn't perfection. It's recovery. It's the ability to return to the plan without shame. When you mess up, and you will, don't spiral. Don't make it mean anything. Just return. Jung once said, I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. That means you're not your lowest moment. You're your next choice. So if you skip a day, start again. If you avoid your task, forgive yourself and do one tiny thing right now. Keep choosing, because every time you return, you weaken the shadow's voice. You're proving again and again that this time is different, and slowly that becomes true. Now here's your challenge, your reward for making it this far. A blueprint, practical, real, straight from Jung's deepest work. The 5-step shadow challenge. 1. Name your shadow. What is your laziness or procrastination really protecting you from? Be honest, write it down. 2. Choose a tiny action, something that moves you forward. It should feel so easy it's almost silly. 3. Track it daily. Every evening, record, did you do it? What resistance came up? What did your shadow say? 4. Speak it. Tell someone. Share your journey. Say, hey, I'm doing this thing and it's hard. Let the shadow hear its own name out loud. 5. Expect resistance. Return anyway. No drama, no shame. Just keep showing up. Every time you do, you rewrite your story. Do this for 3 weeks. Just 3. Watch what happens. You'll start to feel different. Not because your life magically changed, but because you did. You'll notice your lazy days get rarer. You'll notice your self-talk gets softer. You'll begin to trust yourself in a way you haven't in years. And that trust, that's the seed of everything else. Most people never get here. They get stuck in shame, in hype, in overthinking. But you didn't quit. You stayed. You listened. You started. This is it. If you're still here, you've already done something most people never do. You've looked at your patterns, faced the part of you that resists growth, and started the process of honest daily movement. Now comes the most powerful part of this journey, turning your self-awareness into transformation that lasts. Because the truth is, most people almost change. They get the insight, they get the motivation, they start the habit, and then they drift. They slide back into comfort, into distraction, into tomorrow. Why? Because they never systematized the change. They never made it bigger than emotion. They never turned it into something that could survive a bad day, low motivation, or a dip in confidence. Carl Jung understood this deeply. He didn't just want people to understand their shadow, he wanted them to integrate it. Integration is the key. Not pushing away your shadow, not fighting it, but recognizing it, working with it, and moving anyway. Here's how you do that. Let's take the momentum you've built and stabilize it into a personal system that makes failure harder than success. Step 1. Turn small action into identity. By now, you've taken small actions daily. You've seen the shadow whisper, you've seen the resistance, and you acted anyway. That's no longer just a behavior, that's the beginning of a new identity. You're not trying to be disciplined, you're a person who follows through. You're not trying to become focused, you're someone who pays attention. You're not hoping to change, you're someone who changes things. This is what Jung meant when he said, "What you resist persists, what you accept transforms." You're not resisting the old anymore. You're becoming someone new through action. But here's the key, you have to name it. Start saying it, "I'm someone who shows up daily. I'm someone who listens to my resistance and moves anyway. I'm someone who acts without needing hype." That internal story becomes your armor, your compass. When you hit a hard day, and you will, identity, not motivation, is what keeps you going. Step 2, create your fallback ritual. Momentum is fragile, especially early on, so build yourself a safety net. A fallback ritual is a 3-minute version of your habit you can do even on your worst day. Too tired to work out? Walk for 3 minutes. No time to journal? Write 1 sentence. Mentally overwhelmed? Just sit and breathe. The goal is to never break the chain, because what matters more than intensity is consistency. The shadow hates movement. So your power lies in saying, "Even when I have nothing to give, I still move." That rewires your self-image in real time. Step 3, start teaching what you're learning. Here's one of the fastest ways to make your growth permanent. Share it, teach it, reflect it. You don't need to be an expert, you just need to say, "Here's what I'm noticing. Here's what I'm learning about myself." Maybe that's in a journal, maybe it's a voice note to a friend, maybe it's a post online. But once you teach something, even to one person, it becomes more real. Jung believed transformation is relational, that healing doesn't happen in a vacuum. So don't keep your growth to yourself, turn it outward. You'll inspire others and solidify it within yourself. Step 4, celebrate proof, not perfection. Perfection is a shadow trap. It whispers, if it's not amazing, it doesn't count. So you aim too high, burn out, quit. Instead, start collecting proof. Proof that you're showing up. Proof that you're not who you were a month ago. Proof that your shadow isn't calling the shots anymore. Create a small wins log. Every time you resist the urge to delay, every time you move through fear, every time you act, you write it down. These aren't just tasks, they're evidence. They remind you, I am doing it, I am changing. And that belief will carry you further than hype ever could. Step 5, redefine success. Here's where we flip the script completely. Most people define success as an outcome: money, followers, weight loss, external proof. But Jung would say, success is integration. It's the moment when your outer life reflects your inner clarity. It's the moment when your ambition and your unconscious are aligned. That doesn't mean you never struggle again. It means your struggle is no longer silent. It's conscious, it's navigable, it's yours. So from now on, let success mean this: you showed up, even when it wasn't perfect. You listened to your shadow but didn't let it lead. You kept moving, even when nobody was watching. That's success. Final words. If you've made it here, to the end of this journey, you're in rare company. You've done something most never will. You've looked at the invisible part of yourself, the part that avoids, delays, protects, and said, I see you, but I'm moving anyway. That's bravery, that's growth, that's transformation. Carl Jung once said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. But you've made the unconscious conscious. And now, you get to write your own fate. So here's your final challenge. Share it. In the comments, say what your shadow has been whispering to you all this time, or tell us what tiny action you're committing to today. Support someone else who shares theirs. Create the kind of space you wish you'd had when you started. This isn't the end of your story. It's the beginning of a new one. One that's not built on guilt, hype, or pressure, but on truth, intention, and daily movement. You don't need to change everything overnight. You just need to keep choosing what's real over what's comfortable every day. And if you do, your shadow won't disappear, but it will become your greatest teacher because now you're awake, you're honest, you're moving forward. And no one, not even your past self, can take that away. If this video spoke to something deep in you, subscribe, join the journey. There's more ahead. But for now, thank you for walking this one to the end. Your new story starts now.